It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
The world will little note nor long remember what we say, but it can never forget what they did.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hello and welcome to Eccentric Earth, the podcast where I, your host Amy Walker, delve into stories from across history with a guest who has no idea what the topic's going to be. Joining me for this episode is Chris Haigh.
Hi.
Hi, back again.
Back again. You cannot keep me. I am basically the bad penny of your show. I keep turning up. Every time they think, I'm not going to be there, and I'm sort of like, come on, let's talk about some weird shit together. Yay.
Oh, you love your weird shit.
I do. It's like I've accepted it as like a cornerstone of my being at this stage. I used to be like, no, I like normal stuff. I do. I like normal stuff, and I like kind of queer stuff and all that sort of thing. But then sometimes I really need to scratch the urge with like, hey, do you want to know what a bunch of hikers think they saw? Is it a bird crossed with a squirrel? Yes. Come on.
See, I like to think that your Elizabeth Fry episode you enjoyed, and it was like, yeah, that was cool, that was interesting. But as soon as you got Mothman, you were like, oh yeah, I'm coming back.
Yeah. It's very, very, it's like, I mentally see it as a bit like, those plate spinners who they've got like 7 or 8 different kind of things going. And if ever starts to slow down, it's usually an interest. I'm like, oh, I haven't done that in a while, that sort of thing. So this show gets me to kind of inspirational, like The Amazing Elizabeth Fry. Odd, like, oh my god, what was his name? Was it Robin Friday, the footballer?
Oh, legend.
Amazing, genuinely amazing. I'm trying to be a bit thrifty with my books at the moment because I'm paying off some student loans. So I haven't got all the books that I want because I basically want to buy and read books all the time. But his little biography is on my list because he's fucking mental and I love it. And then, some of it is just the plain old, like, Mothman kind of stuff, which is always very fun.
Well, hopefully you'll enjoy tonight's one. I don't think fun covers this one.
Okay.
But it's an interesting story about a family.
Okay, to be fair, you didn't contact me beforehand like you did with the I know it has a proper name, but it's just like that diner massacre.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't contact me about, like, okay, are you okay dealing with this kind of stuff? So I'm assuming it's not as harrowing as that, so I'm pretty up for it.
Well, you can think of it as it's not going to be as harrowing as that, or, well, Amy saw that I handled that once before, so now she's just going to spring on me at any time.
Oh, no. Okay, right. Sorry about family. Let's bring it on.
A quick message to our listeners from our friend and guest Holly Rose about the Cosplay Journal, a coffee table magazine focusing on the diversity and craft of cosplay. Released on the 11th of June, the Cosplay Journal wants to show that not only can anyone be involved in cosplay, but that everyone is capable of learning new skills, creating amazing things, and bringing joy into their own and other people's lives through the art of costume making. The first issue features craft-focused articles on sewing, armour building and makeup, as well as interviews with some incredible cosplayers who have taken their own paths with their hobby, some becoming professionals, some simply being the perfectionist amateur. They ask, are cosplay guests worth it in their opinion piece, and give readers a look into the everyday lives of cosplayers to show you the hard work that goes into these wonderful creations. All of this is accompanied by images of cosplayers from around the UK, showcasing the amazing skills and artistry from the cosplay community. So make sure that you head over to Amazon to pre-order your copy of the Cosplay Journal to ensure that you don't miss out. Steven Gregory Stayner was born on April 18th, 1965, in Merced, California, the third of 5 children born to Delbert and Cary Stayner. He had 3 sisters and an older brother, Cary. On the afternoon of December 4th, 1972, Steven was approached on his way home from school by a man named Irvin Edward Murphy. Murphy, described by those who knew him as a trusting, naive and simple-minded man, had been enlisted by a convicted child rapist, Kenneth Parnell, who had passed himself off as an aspiring minister. Parnell got Murphy to agree to abduct a young boy so that Parnell could raise him in a religious-type deal, as Murphy later stated.
Okay.
Are you okay? I just heard the sigh.
I was like, where's this going? Where's this going? You know, I was thinking, oh, is this kid going to grow up to be a serial... Okay, so he's been kidnapped. Lovely. Okay.
Acting on instructions from Parnell, Murphy passed out gospel tracts to boys walking home from school that day, and after spotting Steven, claimed to be a church representative seeking donations. Steven later claimed that Murphy asked him if his mother would be willing to donate any items to the church. When the boy replied that she would, Murphy then asked Steven where he lived and if he would be willing to take Murphy to his house. After Steven agreed, a white Buick driven by Parnell pulled up, and Steven willingly climbed into the car with Murphy. Parnell then drove a confused Steven to his cabin in nearby Caffey's Valley instead of his home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Never get in a car with people you don't know, kids.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, I get it, it's because we're, you know, 21st century, we both grew up in, like, you know, with the whole stranger danger thing and wherever and everything. But this kid was like, what, 6 or 7, 8 maybe? Why? I'm not victim blaming. I really hope that, like, it isn't like, and then he died. But, why would you go in the back of it? Like, donation and everything, she'd be like, yeah, no, it's fine. I'll walk there. Or, you know, actually, no. I mean, don't show me your house. Hello, strange person who I've never met before, but apparently really wants to either get to know me or my house or my mother. Of course I'll show you where I live. I don't know, it's a different era and everything, but they were like, oh, it's so innocent and everything, but
yeah.
God, it just creeps me out. It creeps me out, and I'm just sort of like, I get like this if I'm watching like a true crime or like a crime documentary sort of thing, and I'm always like, you fucking idiot! Why didn't you check the back seat, for God's sake? You know, I'm that one person who fortunately, I'm classy enough not to say it in the middle of the movie theatre, but mentally I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I just saw Hereditary, and I was like, there's some stuff that goes on in that, when I'm just like, why the hell aren't you just leaving the house? Why aren't you? I like to think that I'm not brave, but I'm smart. And that's better in a horror sense. I'm not like, I'm going to go rescue, you know, like, oh my God, they got our friend. It's not like, I'm going to go rescue her. I'd be like, I'll send flowers to her funeral and just run away. Yeah. Ugh, okay. Right. Yeah, I need to find out what happens to this kid now, and I really hope it ends well.
Unbeknownst to Steven, Parnell's cabin was located only several hundred feet from his maternal grandfather's residence.
No.
Yep.
What?
So he's literally next door to his granddad.
Oh my... Okay. Alright.
Parnell molested Steven the first night. He then began raping Steven 13 days later on December 17th, 1972. After telling Parnell that he wanted to go home many times during his first week with the man, Parnell told Steven that he'd been granted legal custody of the boy because his parents could not afford so many children and that they did not want him anymore. Parnell began calling Steven Dennis Gregory Parnell, retaining Steven's real middle name and his real birth date when enrolling him in various schools over the next several years. Parnell passed himself off as Steven's father, and the two moved frequently around California. He allowed Steven to begin drinking at a young age, and to come and go virtually as he pleased. Parnell had also bounced from one menial job to another, some of his work requiring travel, and he would leave Steven unguarded, causing an adult Steven to remark he could have easily used these absences as opportunities to flee, but was unaware how to summon help. He stated that one of the few positive aspects of his life with Parnell was the dog that he received as a gift, a Manchester Terrier that he named Queenie. This dog had been given to Parnell by his mother, who was not aware of Steven's existence during the period when he was living with Parnell.
Okay, so he kidnaps his kid, starts doing horrible things to him, then sort of brainwashes him. Tells him, okay, your parents don't actually love you, but I'm going to look after you. Gets a dog and, that sort of thing. I'm like, okay, cool, but what? Well, it's not cool, but just, yeah, I don't know. That's the one thing I'm like, oh, he got a dog? Oh, that makes it fine. No. So he said he started to come and go as he pleased and started drinking everything. Like, the come and go as he pleased, it must be some kind of brainwashing or something. Because why would you not immediately just like, yeah, no, I'm gonna go call the police and try and find my family?
Well, I can understand the fact that he's made Steven think that his parents gave him up for adoption, but he's got to know there's some stuff wrong, and even if he didn't know, okay, I'm being molested, I need to go to a hospital to see a doctor or a social worker to see this person, surely you should know police, something bad's happening, go to police. As a basic, even when he was 7, when he was taken, surely you can go to the police if something's wrong, is something that's ingrained.
Well, I mean, what I would say is, because I've done a tiny bit of this. I did a bit of child psychology and a bit of work with that during my degree. And the one thing they do say is that even at, you would think, okay, like 7, 8, they have these, personalities and, all that sort of thing. But it isn't kind of a necessary. They are still incredibly vulnerable, as everyone understands. But yeah, I sort of get what you mean. Where it's like, well, why wouldn't he try anything unless he's got the trauma of having, been kidnapped and raped and all this horrible shit happening to him, and it's easier for him to kind of accept. Oh yeah, no, it's fine. He cares about me. Gonna look after me with my family. He gave me a dog, and he lets me drink and be an adult and all that sort of thing. So it's grooming behaviour to the extreme. But I'm not. Again, I'm frustrated on his behalf because it seems like, oh, he could have gone, but then I sort of understand where he's potentially coming from. In a way, I mean, like I said, this is the first I've heard of this, so I don't know where this is going or if he's going to be in a position or anything, but oh God, this poor kid.
For a period of 18 months, a woman named Barbara Mathias lived with Parnell and Steven. According to Steven, Mathias, along with Parnell, raped him on 9 separate occasions at the age of 9.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, yeah, alright.
In 1975, on Parnell's instruction, Mathias tried to lure another young boy, who was in the Santa Rosa Boys Club with Steven, into Parnell's car. The attempt was unsuccessful. Mathias later claimed to have been completely unaware that Steven had, in fact, been kidnapped.
Oh, that makes it all better, doesn't it? I didn't know he was kidnapped. No, I thought that we were just raping his own son. Oh, well, at least that's, that's off her conscience. Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think she's got one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
As Steven entered puberty, Parnell began to look for a younger child to kidnap. Parnell had used Steven to kidnap children on prior occasions. However, all were unsuccessful, causing Parnell to believe that Steven lacked the means to be an accomplice. Steven later revealed that he intentionally sabotaged these failed kidnappings.
Ah, okay, that's good.
On February 14th, 1980, Parnell and a teenage friend of Steven named Randall Sean Porman kidnapped 5-year-old Timothy White in Ukiah, California. Motivated in part by the young boy's distress, Steven decided to return the boy to his parents. On March 1st, 1980, while Parnell was away at his night security job, Steven left with White and hitchhiked to Ukiah. Unable to locate White's home address, he decided to have White walk into the police station to ask for help without him. Police officers spotted and detained both of them. Steven immediately identified Timothy White and then revealed his own identity and story.
Oh, okay. They're alright. They're okay.
See, it's getting better.
Yeah, it was more, I was thinking, oh, Jesus, it's going to end up like he ends up killing him, and it's like a weird, I don't know, yeah. Magic, yeah, and I would, because how old is he at this stage?
This is 1980, he's born in 65, so 15.
15, okay, alright. No, mentally going through it well, so he's 14, 15. Yeah, if he's 14, 15, then it's just a case of, I'm mentally just I'm working out the chronology and everything, but also, so somewhere along the line, because he said he's been intentionally sabotaging these kidnappings, and all that sort of thing, and he says, oh yeah, now I'm going to return him, and all that sort of thing. So you do wonder what changed from a kid who kind of voluntarily stays and all that sort of thing, whether or not it's just fear, if he's got nowhere to go and he's just thinking, well, I can't leave because I've got, no money and everything, or he'll catch me and that'll risk provoking and killing him. Like, there's been interviews with serial killers, all the survivors of serial killers before, where they've said, they've been asked, well, why did you stay with them for so long when you had a chance? It's like, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And, you don't want to risk provoking them or pissing them off, or, because that's make it more likely then for them to kill you.
Oh, yeah, it's understandable. If you're already afraid for your life, you're going to do whatever you can to preserve it, and whilst running away could help, it's also, that's definitely going to piss them off if it fails. Yeah. It's completely understandable, yeah. Oh,
yeah, it's like, it's the thing of, do you stay and hope, above the rose, and hopefully they won't kill you? Or is it you take the risk and actually think, well, yeah, I think if you're in that situation and you kind of think there's a stronger chance of me making out than there isn't, then I think you have to go for it. So I don't know what it was particularly about Timothy White, although I think it's because they've said before, it was like, they've had previous failed attempts, and this one was with a friend, and this Tim White did get kidnapped, and then they decided to kind of take him away and everything. So it's a positive, and I kind of hope that Steven can kind of adjust, because if he was kidnapped at 7 and now he's, say, at least 14, that's at least half of his life. In fact, half of that he'll remember the most. Because when from ages of about 0 to 5, you don't remember it. You don't. Your brain just kind of filters stuff out and kind of goes, no, you don't really need that anymore. It stores all the skills and all that kind of knowledge, but all the kind of episodic memory and all that kind of stuff kind of gets shunted away into the back. So he spent half of his life with a guy suffering, I'm presuming, regular sexual abuse. During the fact, he says he started getting raped, what was it, like 12 days after 13 days after the thing had happened. So I'm going to guess it's not stopped, unless, it's like, he got too old and that's the reason why they're picking younger ones. And I watch too many crime shows. I really do. It's awful, but I've just finished I'm not advertising, there are other streaming services available, but I have just finished The Alienist on Netflix, which is amazing, and it deals with the murder of child prostitutes in kind of Victorian era New York.
Jesus.
I know, well, it's like boy prostitutes and everything who are mutilated and killed and all that sort of thing, and it has weird undertones, but it's this whole idea of, if they go past a certain age and start looking too old, then they're no longer useful or anything. So I don't know. I kind of want to get into it, because I can't remember what's the name of the actual bastard who did this. I keep forgetting.
Kenneth Parnell.
Parnell, that's it. I mean, I don't know if there's any interviews with Parnell or anything where he might explain it, but I don't. Even when you watch these interviews with serial killers and stuff, they don't explain it in like the most logical sense. Sometimes they do, to be fair, but a lot of it is just like, oh, I didn't do anything, or I didn't, this or that or that sort of thing. So yeah. Anyway, we left with them in the police station.
By daybreak on March 2nd, 1980, Parnell had been arrested on suspicion of abducting both boys. After the police checked into Parnell's background, they found a previous sodomy conviction from 1951.
Okay.
Both children were reunited with their families that day. In 1981, Parnell was tried and convicted of kidnapping White and Steven in 2 separate trials. He was sentenced to 7 years, but was paroled after serving 5.
What?
Yeah, 5 years for having Steven for 7.
So he was sentenced for the same... Oh, okay.
Parnell was not charged with the numerous sexual assaults on Steven and other boys, because most of them had occurred outside the jurisdiction of the Merced County prosecutor, or were by then outside the statute of limitations.
Oh, fuck off.
Because the statute of limitations on rape is brilliant.
Wait, is that... I thought they'd... Okay. I thought they'd kind of removed that. You know what, the historic sexual abuse allegations and all that sort of thing. I thought they'd, like... I don't know. Is it... Well, I mean...
Well, this is 1980.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of with all the, you know, the Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, all that kind of stuff that's come out in the past kind of 12 months. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, did something in the statute change or something in the law change where it's like, there is no limitation on it now? But yeah, so this is fucking horrible. So
Yep.
I really hope it has changed.
I'm just going to have a look.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just looking at an article here from last year. 34 states impose limits on when a rape can be brought forward, ranging from 3 to 30 years after the assault.
Oh.
So depending on where you are, if it's 3 years after the assault, sorry, tough, but other states can give up to 30 years. It may have changed since. This is a little bit older,
Yeah.
but
Oh, God.
yeah, so in 1980, I imagine the same rules, if not worse.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, the more you know.
The Mendocino County prosecutors, acting almost entirely alone, decided not to prosecute Parnell for the sexual assaults that occurred in their jurisdiction. This is likely due to the prosecutors' belief that they were protecting Steven because rape and molestation victims were seen as damaged goods.
Oh. No. I'm not touching that because we will be here for a good hour or so. But no, okay.
They may have also felt that they were protecting the Stayner parents' reluctance to discuss Parnell's crimes because of the stigma of male sexual abuse.
See, okay, that I sort of get because this is 2018, and this week Terry Crews, amazing actor, all around decent guy, has been in hearings in the past couple of weeks testifying that he was, sexually assaulted. And look at us, this is 38 years, 30 odd years since, and there is still a huge stigma about it. I know people of different genders who have experienced sexual abuse and kind of sexual assault survivors and everything, and there is still a massive stigma if you identify. Actually no. I was going to say across all genders, there's still a massive stigma about it, but there is almost a unique kind of stigma that comes with being, whether you're cis male or trans male or male identifying whatsoever, of coming forward and saying I was sexually assaulted, I was sexually abused, because there is still such a weird, why did you let it happen? The blame. It's a weird cocktail of shame and toxic masculinity and horrible stuff that I've seen really negatively impact on friends of mine. One of whom the police said, well, there's just no evidence, we can't do anything. And it was just shitty. And it's just a shitty way to live. So no, it's horrible, but I'm really not surprised.
Yeah.
Even if they were trying to be like, cool, we're doing this so you can go up and you don't have to have this cloud hanging over you, which, okay, that I can sort of understand. But change doesn't happen by just kind of covering shit up.
Mm.
I'm frustrated, and this is 30 odd years ago, and I can't change anything, but I get both perspectives. I get the side that really wanted justice, and they would have talked about it, but then what would Steve's life have been like? Maybe he's still out there and he's actually talking about this and it's a thing, or I don't know. I honestly don't know, but it's... I don't know what to say, to be honest.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no! Listen. No.
I feel like I've given you. I know I've given you a harsher subject, but I didn't realise.
No. Oh, listen. I'm not coming from the perspective of that I'm very, very fortunate that I've never had anything like this happen to me. But it's because it's happened to people that I've known and that I care about. So I get mad on their behalf, even though the vast majority of my amazing, wonderful, loved ones have just gone on and like, well, do you know what? It's a part of me, but it doesn't define me. And I'm like, that is the best way to do it, that sort of thing. But then equally, I would, and this isn't a threat, but if I ever did find out who it was, or was in a particular situation, I would at least make them hurt a bit.
Yeah.
Like just a smidge, just a bit, and some. But yeah, honestly, it's absolutely fine. But it's just, I think shit like this just riles people up and gets such a visceral reaction.
Yeah. No, I can understand it. I had a friend, well, I've had a few friends who have been raped and sexually assaulted, but one in particular, when we're in sixth form together, my best friend, incredibly close, she had been raped, and like how you said, she wouldn't tell me who it was because she knew I'd probably, at a minimum, assault them, but yeah, probably try and kill them.
Yeah.
And it's a topic no one wants to talk about because it's so brutal, probably more so than murder in a lot of ways, because it's something that people have to keep living with in a way murder victims don't, and can destroy lives. And but it happens to so many people. You have to kind of talk about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think at least from my perspective of it, I think a lot of it is also tied up on the fact that it's, by its nature, it is, sexual, and because we're much more likely to not want to talk about anything sexual, if that makes any sense. Violence and that, if it's like, and it is violence, it's not about kind of sexual desire or anything, it's about power and violence and, just all that sort of thing. But when I'm trying to find the best way to articulate it, because it is so inherently linked to, like I said, sex, and we don't talk about sex, we don't normalise it. There's a lot of like, oh, sex positive and that sort of thing, which is great, absolutely for it. But then you also need to look at the other side of it when it isn't all kind of relationships and, consent and all that sort of thing. Because on the flip side of that, you've got when it goes wrong, and we need to talk about that as much and normalise that. And if you're not normalise it, then normalise the discussion of it and make sense that, if this is happening to you, or, like it's like abusive relationships. I'm very fortunate in that I've both never been in an abusive relationship, and also, to my knowledge, have not been friends or close friends with anyone who has been in one or is currently in one. However, I've certainly, done the research in it, and I've listened to experiences and all that sort of thing, and it's, the warning signs, which is like, if someone's being possessive, if they're being evasive, if they're being emotionally manipulative, if they're being, physically, it's just all this kind of stuff that gets talked about, but it's all still very hush-hush. There's no out and out saying like, hi, if this is happening, this is the sign of an emotionally abusive relationship, so you really need to talk to someone. Or even addressing it, and this is something I've seen pop up many times, I think is great, actually getting down on the ground level and speaking to, it is primarily guys, hold their hands up, and speaking to them, okay, so this is not normal behaviour, because it's not inherent that they, it's in his blood, he's going to go off and be a rapist, or he's going to be a murderer, or he's going to be whatever. No, it's learned behaviour.
Yeah.
There might be the odd predilection, I'm not going to deny that, but then equally, the vast 99% of it is, is societal, is the idea that, you can, perfect example, do you remember the Dapper Laughs thing from a few years ago?
Mm.
Yeah, for those of you who were listening who don't know, so basically Dapper Laughs was a comedian, quote unquote, and his thing was going around grabbing girls' arses and then trying to flirt with them or trying to pull it off as a joke and everything. So he was basically sexually assaulting women on camera and playing it off as a joke. And the minute it happened, it basically, and quite rightfully so, his entire, his show got cancelled, his career crumbled, all that sort of thing. But it's that kind of behaviour that young lads see, and they say, oh, do you know what, he's a typically handsome guy, he's going round, he's flirting with, beautiful women, all that sort of thing, and so they normalise that behaviour. It's the same thing that they've said about porn, in that, you know, watching that kind of behaviour, and I'm not like anti-porn, I think, you know, if you want to use it, go ahead, but normalising that kind of behaviour, when it's particularly violent, or particularly misogynistic, or kind of dark and everything, you know, at such a young age, it imprints, and they think, do you know what, that's the right way to do it, you know, and then it feeds into girls then, or, you know, I'm not going to generalise, we've got boys do it as well, whether, you know, saying, if you don't send me a picture of your boobs, or, you know, your genitals, or whatever, I'm going to go around telling everyone that you are a prude, and if you do it, they're going to call you a slut, or they're going to say this, or they're going to say that. So there's just a lot of work that just needs to go in and kind of unpicking all this shit, because it's that kind of shit that then leads into stuff like, you know, rape and sexual assault.
Well, I think it starts even earlier than that. Look at... I don't have kids, so I don't know if this is still a thing, but it always was when I was young, which is, oh, he's hitting you. It's okay, it means he likes you.
Oh, yes. All that bullshit.
Like, infant school level, like 5 or 6 years. If you like the girl, hurt her to get her attention.
Yeah.
I think that is the earliest, like, that's the start point where it all stems from. It's okay to boys to hurt girls if they like them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole, yeah, exactly. You know, like, no, he pulled on your hair, but it just means he likes you. If he was saying mean things, it's just because he likes you. You know, reinforcing that kind of shit. I mean, I'm mad enough that it's not really to do with it. It's kind of linked, but not really. Where it's like, you know, you have a baby boy or something, and he's automatically in, like, you know, lady killer t-shirts, or if it's him and a you know, a girl his own age, say about 6 months or whatever, playing, it's like, oh, they're gonna get married with a... You don't know anything. Sex is not the be-all and end-all. Sexual attraction is not the be-all and end-all. You can have platonic relationships, you can have all that sort of thing, but let's be right, you're also sexualising a 6-year-old. I know you don't mean to, and you think, oh, it's just, you know, a bit of fun, that sort of thing. Yeah, but it's that kind of shit. And then when you start talking about, like, oh, you know, he's pulling her hair and chasing her around and trying to lift up a skirt to see her knickers, that sort of thing. Oh, he's just playing boys will be boys. Nothing chaps my heart, nothing more than the phrase boys will be boys.
Yep, I hate
it. Because it's learned. It's a learned behaviour. Don't start going around saying, like, oh, well, it's just how, you know, boys act and it's a masculine thing. No, it's not. Because you know what? There's plenty of, like, so-called feminine behaviours that guys used to do, and it's not a thing anymore, and it should be. Guys, I know this is a very trivial one, but it's a point. Guys used to paint their nails before going into battle. In the French court, guys used to wear high heels, but all of a sudden, because it's feminine, oh no, it's not masculine to wear that sort of thing. Like, gender is a spectrum. Chill out. But normalising these kind of these behaviours just makes everything incredibly toxic, and is then putting so much pressure on everybody. I know I said I had nothing to say. That was clearly a lie. I was like, I have nothing to say for the next 15 seconds. Sorry, yeah, so he's fine and Steven thingy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I need a drink. I've been talking that long. I was fine. Like, I need a drink.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Are you okay to carry on?
Yeah, no. Cool. I did this in a job interview a few weeks ago. I was having a job interview for someone in my team. I didn't get it. It's not the end of the world or anything. But the last thing was like, hey, it's what do you think is wrong with the education system? And I just talked at them for 5 minutes. And then at the end I went, I am so sorry. I've just talked at you for 5 minutes and they burst out laughing. And I just realised I had the same thing. Oh,
that's what happens when you're passionate on a subject. It's all good.
Oh, yeah. All right, thank you.
Irvin Murphy and Randall Portman, who had helped abduct Timothy White, were convicted of lesser charges. Both claimed that they knew nothing of the sexual assaults on Steven. Barbara Mathias was never arrested. Steven remembered the kindness that Uncle Murphy had showed him in his first week of captivity whilst they were both under the influence of Parnell's manipulation, and he believed that Murphy was as much Parnell's victim as he and Timothy White. Steven Stayner's kidnapping and its aftermath prompted California lawmakers to change state laws to allow consecutive prison terms in similar abduction cases.
Well, that's something at least.
Yeah, something good has come out of that. Which I'm finding is a pattern in a lot of these stories. Something bad happens, the legal system is not appropriate, and then they change it. So
Yeah. I mean, it's all a bit kind of bolting the stable door if the horse is loose, but...
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it won't really stop other things, but God knows they might keep the perpetrators in prison longer, rather than 5 years.
After returning to his family, Steven had trouble adjusting to a more structured household, as he had been allowed to smoke, drink, and do as he pleased while he lived with Parnell. In an interview with Newsweek shortly after he was reunited with his family, Steven said, "I returned almost a grown man, and yet my parents saw me at first as their 7-year-old. After they stopped trying to teach me the fundamentals all over again, it got better. But why doesn't my dad hug me anymore? Everything has changed. Sometimes I blame myself. I don't know sometimes if I should never have come home. What would I have been better off if I didn't?"
Oh, Jesus, that's sad.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that poor kid. Why doesn't my dad hug me anymore? Oh,
Yeah.
doesn't that just break your heart a bit?
Stephen initially underwent brief counselling, but never sought additional treatment. He also refused to disclose all of the details of sexual abuse he endured whilst living with Parnell. In a 2007 interview, Stephen's sister Corey said that her brother did not seek counselling because their father said he didn't need any.
Okay.
Says he doesn't need counselling and won't hug him. Father of the year.
Yeah, well, again, products of the times, you know.
I know,
I
but
was gonna
I can't
say,
help but
he
feel
doesn't
angry
need-
about that.
I know. Oh, yeah, it's incredibly... I'm shitting everything, and I don't know, maybe the dad just thought, well, try and normalise it for him and just, you know... But if it's, you know, the 80s and everything, it won't, you know, super progressive in terms of that kind of stuff, but, yeah, that's a shame. I just feel so sorry for this kid. You know, he's been pulled out of one home and everything. It's like, well, what's the point in me going back to a family that I don't really recognise anymore? And then, you know, his dad won't hug him, and he's having to live under, you know, more rules and all that kind of stuff. It's just, if you need counselling for anything, Christ knows you need it for that.
Yeah. His sister said Stephen got on with his life, but was pretty messed up. He was teased by other children at school for being molested and eventually dropped out. Stephen began drinking frequently and was eventually kicked out of the family home, and his relationship with his father remained strained.
Oh, lovely. Wonderful. Your abused son is going through some issues, and you decide to kick him out.
Yep.
Great. You don't think seeing a counsellor would have helped, even though he develops an alcohol problem, because he was introduced to it at a really young age, and it's probably a way for him to get control. But you know what? He doesn't need a bit of therapy or a bit of counselling. He should just man up. Okay.
In 1985, at the age of 20, Stephen married 17-year-old Jodie Edmondson. The couple had 2 children, Ashley and Stephen Jr. Jodie later said that having a family of his own helped Stephen find some peace, although he still blamed himself for being abducted.
Well, I hope he was, you know, able to find a bit of peace.
Yeah. Stephen later worked with child abduction groups, spoke to children about stranger danger, and granted interviews about his kidnapping. He also found some help in religion and joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Alright, okay.
On September 17th, 1989, Stephen was heading home from work on a rainy afternoon when his motorcycle collided with a car that pulled out into traffic. He sustained fatal head injuries and died at Merced Community Medical Centre shortly after.
Oh no.
At the time of his accident, Stephen was riding without a licence and was not wearing a helmet. The driver who struck Stephen fled from the scene, but later surrendered to police shortly before the funeral.
God, so he was only, what, 24?
Yeah.
24. God almighty.
On September 20th, Stephen's funeral was held at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Merced. 500 people attended, including 14-year-old Timothy White, who was one of Stephen's pallbearers.
I mean, I don't know if I can call that sweet or touching, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
he was there for the person who saved him.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's something. And it's just a car accident.
Yeah,
He goes through all that and he gets, you know, knocked off his bike.
when he's putting his life back together as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was idiot for not wearing a helmet and no license and all that sort of thing, but like 24. That's so young. That's so young. Jeez.
When Steven was kidnapped in 1972, his brother Cary, older by 4 years, became jealous of his younger brother. Steven was all that his parents thought about, and they put so much time and effort into locating their missing son that Cary often felt isolated and abandoned. When his brother eventually returned home, Cary felt that even more attention was given to his brother and became resentful. J.P. Miller, the screenwriter who wrote the film I and Steven, based upon Steven's abduction, interviewed Cary about his feelings towards his brother. Cary told him his head was all bloated out. He never really got along well after he came back. All of a sudden, Steven was getting all of these gifts, getting all of this clothing, getting all of this attention. I guess I was jealous. I'm sure I was. I got put on the back burner, you might say.
Okay, I mean, jealousy, I kind of understand that.
After Steven's death, Cary became even more isolated, spending a great deal of time in the mountains. He lost all ambition and was working a dead-end job while living with his uncle Cary Stayner, who Cary would later claim molested him. It was during this time in the mountains that Cary claimed to have seen Bigfoot.
Okay. Alright. Fair enough. Okay, the older brother saw Bigfoot. Fair enough.
In 1990, Cary's uncle Jerry was found murdered. Merced County Assistant Sheriff Henry Strength said Cary Stayner came home from lunch and apparently walked in on a burglary. His killer shot him with Cary Stayner's own shotgun. Cary Stayner was living with his uncle at the time and was questioned, but was later cleared as a suspect. In 1997, Cary was hired as a handyman at the Cedar Lodge Motel in El Portal, just outside of Highway 140 Arch Rock entrance to Yosemite National Park. Between February and July 1999, he murdered 2 women and 2 teenagers.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, we're taking a turn now.
Not where I saw this going. Okay.
Did your hopes get perked when he saw Bigfoot?
Well, I thought, oh, Bigfoot, and he's going to turn out to have, like, you know, a psychic revelation or something. I didn't... oh, my God. Jesus.
Yeah, this poor family is all I can say. In February 1999, Carol Sund, her daughter Julie, and Julie's friend Sylvia Pelosa checked into Cedar Lodge. Cary approached their motel room late at night. He insisted he needed to fix a leak in their bathroom, and Carol reluctantly let the handyman inside. Once inside, Cary pulled out a gun. He bound them and dragged Carol in the bathroom and strangled her. Next, he took Sylvina and strangled her as Julie lay helpless in the bedroom. When he returned, he tortured and raped her for hours. Then he put her in a car and slit her throat. He dumped her body in brush and then threw Carol and Sylvina into the trunk of Carol's car. He set it ablaze and watched it burn. Carol and Sylvina were found in the trunk of the charred remains of Carol's Pontiac rental car. The bodies were burned beyond recognition and were identified using dental records. A note was sent to police with a hand-drawn map indicating the location of Julie. The top of the note read, "We had fun with this one."
Oh.
Investigators went to the location depicted on the map and found the remains of Julie. Detectives began interviewing employees of the Cedar Lodge Motel where the first 3 victims had been staying just before their deaths. One of these employees was Cary Stayner, but he was not considered a suspect at that point because he had no criminal history and remained calm during police interview. Upon meeting Cary, FBI agent Jeff Reineck asked if Cary had ever seen the movie Billy Jack, noting Cary's resemblance to the film's hero. Initially, Cary denied seeing the movie. However, 90 minutes later, after building rapport during the drive to the FBI headquarters in Sacramento from the nudist resort where he'd been picked up, Cary surprised Reineck by reciting several of Billy Jack's lines from the film, raising suspicions within Reineck that Cary may have lied to him about the case. 5 months later, Cary would go on to murder Yosemite Institute naturist Jody Ruth Armstrong. Cary pulled up to Armstrong's cabin just as she was leaving. He tried striking up a conversation about Bigfoot before he pulled out a gun and forced her back into the cabin. He bound her with duct tape and dragged her back outside to his car. As he drove his car away for a field, Armstrong pushed open the passenger door and leapt from the vehicle. She was running as fast as she could, hoping to reach safety. Her friends were just 100 yards away.
Oh, God.
Carey jumped out of the car after her, charged up behind her with his knife, and began cutting through her neck until he decapitated her.
Fucking hell. Jesus.
He then threw her body in a ditch. When Jodie was found, eyewitnesses said they saw a blue 1979 International Scout parked outside the cabin where she was staying. Detectives traced this vehicle to Carey. This caused Carey to become the prime suspect in the case. FBI agents John Bowles and Jeff Reineck found Carey staying at Laguna del Sol nudist resort in Wilton, where he was arrested. His vehicle yielded evidence linking him to Jodie Armstrong. During his interrogation, Carey confessed to the 4 murders, as well as to sending the map to find Julie's body. Carey claimed after his arrest that he had fantasized about murdering women since he was 7 years old, long before the abduction of his brother.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was surprised by that part, because I thought this was all a result of what happened with his brother.
So it's just... Wow. Okay. So a kidnapping victim and a serial killer just happened to be in the same family.
Yeah.
Jesus.
During his trial, Carey pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyers claimed that the Stayner family had a history of sexual abuse and mental illness, manifesting itself not only in the murders, but also in his obsessive-compulsive disorder and request to be provided with child pornography in return for his confession.
No.
Surely as soon as someone says, I will confess if you give me this, that's admitting that you did it by saying you can confess. It's like, well, surely that is a confession in itself.
That in itself is just, it's like going, I tell you what, I'll confess to this murder if you let me have the big knife. I'll let you know the bloody knife that you found in my thing. If you let me have that, I'll confess to the murder. It's like, no, but, oh, God. Okay. I mean, okay. So, if one thing is shown, it proves that genetics aren't everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know when there's a serial killer lurking. It could be your brother or God knows. Jesus. Ugh.
Dr. Jose Arturo Silva testified that Carey had mild autism, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and paraphilia, the intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, behaviours, and individuals.
Okay, so that just... that covers all manner of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like those people who are, like, sexually attracted to, like... Well, it goes from, like, the mild, I'm in quote-unquote brackets, mild, like, oh, I like having sex with my car, to, you know, paedophilia.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Carey was nevertheless found sane and convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder by a jury on August 27th, 2002. During the sentencing, Santa Clara County Superior Court Judge Thomas C. Hastings abruptly left the courtroom so he could compose himself in private. He returned several minutes later, red-faced and misty-eyed. The circumstances of this case are horrendous and devastating, he said, before announcing the sentence of death. Hastings rejected a defence motion seeking a new trial based on the claims of juror misconduct. Defence lawyer Marcia Morrissey asserted that 3 jurors had failed to disclose on questionnaires during the selection process that they had been molested as children. Then she alleged that the same 3 jurors discussed the abuse during deliberations. Hastings determined that the conduct did not deprive Carey of a fair trial and that there was overwhelming evidence for a conviction. See, I know defence lawyers are a good thing and everyone deserves one.
Yeah.
But trying to say, well, these 3 jurors talked about their own trauma, therefore it throws out the case, is a bit of a low thing to do.
I mean, it's the moral quandaries. It's like, you know, your role, your job is to defend your client. You know, in the case of someone, you know, if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you, for your court-appointed, you know, defence attorney or whatever. That's still their job. They can't throw it, otherwise, you know, it looks bad on them, obviously, professionally, but it's also kind of them not doing their job. Morally, the whole thing is horrible, but, I mean, you've got to use every every chance you get, I guess. That's why
but there's every chance you get that relates to the case. But how is that argument of these guys didn't say that they were molested as children, but then talked about it together? How does that affect whether this person was guilty of murdering 4 women?
Well, yeah.
It should be. I'm going to do what I can to defend you, pertinent to the case.
Well, it sort of is, because these people have experienced trauma or any kind of criminal activity. It makes them more inclined towards a guilty verdict, regardless. So, perfect example of this. So, do you have you heard or listened to the podcast Serial?
No,
Okay.
I know of it, but I've not listened to it.
Yeah. So it did 2 seasons. The second was crap, but the first season was really good. And it was about the murder of I really want to get her name right, Hae Min Lee, who was a teenager in the 1990s. And a young lad, her ex-boyfriend, I believe, called Adnan Syed, basically, was arrested for it, and he is currently serving a life sentence for it. What they did, and they did this on the thing, is that they showed the audio of each pool of jurors being asked by the judge, saying like, okay, have you ever been convicted of a crime, or have you ever had a crime committed against you? And it's the ones where, if a crime was ever committed against them, that he dismissed, because it's prejudice. So I do get what the lawyer was trying to do, because saying that they didn't disclose this kind of bias, if I'm playing devil's advocate here, this bias towards, this guy's a disgusting piece of shit, which he is, but more of a bias towards that. I get that's what they were arguing, basically saying like, well, we didn't know this. It should have been someone who was entirely neutral, if possible, who could then give it an objective thing in terms of the jury. So, morally, it's underhand.
Yeah.
But in terms of them doing their job, it sort of makes sense, and it is something that I can definitely understand the reasoning for why.
But could they not, with that same kind of argument, turn around and say, but Cary's saying he himself was molested as a child, and these guys were, but they haven't sided with him? Could they not twist it round to, well, they could have had sympathy for him being fellow abuse victims, but they still found him guilty. That's how guilty he is, that they kind of stepped back and went, no, if you get what I'm
I understand. If they'd had that kind of like, well, he was a product of his time, but they'd also found him sane, which puts the onus then that it's kind of self-directed, it's of his volition to do this. Yes, he's suffering from, for example, autism and OCD and all that sort of thing, but there are millions of people out there with those conditions, and it's the tiniest of tiny percentages that actually end up going on to, commit any crime whatsoever. So, I understand what you're saying, that, they could send it around and like, oh, well, he suffered this, but, according to, the information we've got, I believe, he wasn't actually molested. I don't believe he was, in the information you gave.
No,
you said he wanted to do this from like the age of 7, so it predated the actual the abduction of Steven. So it then becomes, so if this has always been in him and he's been waiting, if it had been like a major compulsion, then the fact he's never been arrested for a crime before, however old he was when he killed the 4 people, shows at least, willing and intent. If it had been a compulsion, if it had been like, oh, well, it's just a behaviour I couldn't control everything, then why wasn't there a pattern leading up to it? So the fact he restrained himself and showed self-control kind of underplayed his, mental, he was going to try and pull the insane card. So it's a, it's a horrible one, and the whole point is, they're just trying to make their arguments. They don't always have to match up. They can definitely take a different argument with different individuals, but it's got to be a hell of a job being a defence lawyer. Yeah. I don't mean it in a good way.
Jen's sons, the husband and father of victims Carol and Julie Sons, told the court, while standing only feet away from Stayner, he tortured my daughter. I know he had no trouble killing little girls in the middle of the night. I just wish he would step up and take his punishment now. Cary's parents, Kay and Delbert Stayner, said they were prepared for the sentence, but believed their son should have been shown mercy. They said that Cary is a sick man who was deprived of fair trial by a biased judge. I stand by my son, Delbert Stayner said. If he had gotten help, there would have been 4 people alive today.
Yeah.
Cary Stayner is currently on death row, awaiting execution at San Quentin Prison in California. See, this is something I really hate about Delbert Stayner. He wasn't there for Steven after everything he went through, but he says he stands by his son who murdered 4 women.
Wow. Okay, so the dad is confirmed a piece of shit.
Yeah. It's like you have Steven saying, why won't my dad hug me? And then this other person saying, well, if he'd have gotten help, it wouldn't have happened. I stand by Cary. It's not his fault. The same guy who said his son who was raped repeatedly didn't need counselling said his murder son should have had counselling to make it not happen. I'm blaming the dad. The dad is an arsehole.
Yeah. Oh, listen, the dad, I mean, yes, you can argue he's a product of his time and all that sort of thing, but he's also a prick by the sound of things. And it also sounds like, super toxic masculinity, misogynistic. Because that's right, when it was his son being kidnapped and raped and all this horrible shit happened to him, they were like, oh, it's fine, just man up, all that sort of thing. And now his other son, or, one of his other children, has gone on to kill 4 women, and he's like, no, it's a mental issue, that sort of thing. Because he was the one taken away from it. So, fuck this guy most severely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can go diddle himself with a hot poker. I'm really glad you brought me on for such a light episode, Amy. It made a real change of pace.
Well, you've had a few light episodes for a while.
I know.
No,
I know. It's been a while since the massacre.
Yeah, I knew this wasn't. I don't know if I share. I was going to say, I knew this wasn't as bad as the massacre, but in some way, obviously, they're both horrible stories, but I thought, you handled the massacre, you're fine. This one won't bother you as much. And then I start in the story, I'm like, why did I not give you a heads up? I'm a horrible person. Yeah. This story's horrific.
No. Oh, listen, it's fine. As the dear listeners will be able to attest, I got quite, and lots of that you did as well, not quite, passionate about certain topics and all that sort of thing. But it's, I guess, in the scale of, hey, not as many people died, because it was only like the 4 people of the brother, which I didn't see coming. That is like, that's a very, it sounds awful to say, but that's quite a good twist.
Yeah, when I found out these things related, because I found out about Cary first, because like yourself saying, I kind of into the true crime stuff, and I found out about Cary, and then it mentioned his brother Steven, and I started looking into that, and I was like, how are these 2 extraordinary, amazing cases happen to the same family? It's so shocking that, because they're both 1 in a million type things, really, and it happens to the same family. I thought I've got to tell this story because it's so almost unbelievable that it could happen.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, in a way, I'm kind of glad I gave it to you in the sense of because I didn't even really know this, but you said you've done the child psychology and stuff, so it's like you kind of gave a really interesting insight into Steven and some of his stuff. So
yeah, no, yeah,
I'm intentionally geared towards you.
Oh no, listen, because of it's not so much the work I do at the moment, but my undergrad is in psychology, and I'm just finishing up my psychology and neuroscience and mental health masters. So I'm kind of I'm a very optimistic person who is attracted a bit to the darker side of stuff. Not all the time. I don't think I could live in it and do that as a job. But I've always had that side where I'm just like, oh, cool, murders, true crime, unsolved mysteries. That's all. So I kind of like that stuff anyway. So I'm pleased that I'm now your dark shit correspondent. Just being like, oh, cool, here's a thing where 80 people died, bring up Chris, and I'm like, 80 people died? Sign me up. No. That sounds awful. Sounds like an sociopath.
Yeah, I think we need to worry about, are you going to be a topic of this show one day?
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't kill him. I mean, I know we, said, oh yeah, cool. I know this isn't the right podcast for that. I could kill but only in like defense. You know, if like someone tried to hurt like someone I loved. I'm a self-defense killer. I could like if I saw someone threatening, you know, a member of my family or like one of my best friends or a dog, something, I'd be like, cool. If I stab you, that's like totally on accident, so I'm sorry. But I could never like premeditate. Plus the fact I don't have the patience for it. I think you've got to be incredibly patient when you're planning out a murder. So I've heard, you know. So I just it's not it's not in me. I think I would just apologise all the time. I'm sorry. Then stop. I mean, I could. I mean, I should. I'm sorry. And just keep doing that. So no, I don't. Hopefully, I won't become a topic. I mean, to be fair, imagine your ratings. You know, it'd be a bit like finding out that, like, you know, Simon Mayo was a serial killer, wouldn't it? All the podcasts he's been on would go through them. Going like,
well,
yeah.
If ever you want to help my ratings, you know, go ahead.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's not really on my to-do list at the moment. But I'll put it in. I'll put it in the back pocket, Amy, just in case. If all else fails, what better way to advertise than just like, you know, killing someone and being like, yes, I am indeed convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, but have you checked out Eccentric Earth on iTunes podcast?
just do a plug for it in the middle of court.
Do you have anything to say? Yes. You can find Eccentric Earth on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbay, all reputable things. You can now get Eccentric Earth t-shirts with Chris Haigh was on here. Yes, that one. Yes, the serial killer. Yeah. Like I said, probably not gonna happen, but I'll if it ever does, you'll be the first one I go for.
Well, if people enjoyed this episode, hopefully for the right reasons, where can they find you online, Chris?
Sorry, I love that. Just like, and if you enjoyed it for the wrong reasons, like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop it.
If you got a real kick out of the child molestation or murder, just unsubscribe. You know.
If you have a paraphilia, which is today's word, put off all this horrible shit, then definitely get some counselling. You know, see some people, see if you can work stuff out. I'm on Twitter at higher_boy. I do a couple of different podcasts. I do Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast with 2 of my Canadian mates, Brandon Shea Masala and Tom Caldwell. We are a Hitchcock historical podcast in the sense that we go through chronologically go through each Hitchcock movie and discuss it and analyse it and view it through various viewpoints and lenses, and it's really fun and really enjoyable. The other podcast that I co-host is North by Nerdwest, and that is me and one of my best mates, Evan Platt, and we just catch up every so often on nerdy stuff that we're really into. So if you're really into kind of like sci-fi or geek or horror, or, you know, just chatting about stuff, we've been on a real kind of drag race kick recently, so there's been discussion of that, and misogyny and feminism and all kinds of cool stuff, and basically we just end up laughing for over an hour straight. So if you're looking for something light and fun and entertaining, then please feel free to check us out. You can find Not by Nerdwest on iTunes, and you can find Good Evening Pod as part of the Fandom of the Fandom Podcast Network. I never get that right. It's a mouthful. It really is. It's one good thing about just running your own thing. It's just being like, it's on iTunes, and I don't need to do anything else. But yeah, we are on there, and we are on iTunes and Stitcher, and I think Podbay as well. So please feel free to check us out, and if you really like us, then like and subscribe.
And if you enjoyed this episode, you can follow us on Twitter by going to @eccentric_earth. We're on Facebook. Go to www.facebook.com/eccentric earth. And we're on Instagram. All our social media are kept up to date daily. We're trying to get back onto daily. It slipped for a little while, but we're coming back strong. We have some fun info about upcoming episodes and nice little tidbits on things that happened in that day in history to keep people entertained. So give us a follow and hopefully you'll enjoy that. And if you want to write in with any suggestions about things you want us to see us cover or about any feedback, our email address is eccentricearth@outlook.com. You can find us on all major podcast providers, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we're on YouTube as well. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, Chris. I hope I didn't make you think you're going to have a nice topic and then spring something on you and it's now left you feeling awful, because I feel bad for for this, if I'm being honest.
Oh, listen, to be fair, if I wanted to make you feel bad, I'd be like, I can't believe you did this to me, Amy. I can't believe. You know, no, listen, I have had a blast. I mean, it's like a very dark topic that got much darker. I didn't realise it'd go that as dark as it did, but who knows? It's always a lot of fun coming on. So yeah, I am very, very happy you invited me on, and I'm glad to be your new what was the term? Dark shit correspondent. So next time Amy's going to be covering just weird shit. No doubt I'll be on going like, oh my god, how weird is this shit?
It's when someone asks you how the episode went, it's like, yeah, it was horrible. There was child kidnapping, multiple molestations and rape, and then it got dark. People can be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, like, if you look at my Twitter following thing, I will be tweeting and going like, so that was an experience. When I thought it couldn't get darker, it dropped to dark degrees by like 20, and I was like, which it still takes a lot to surprise me, so I'm still very much enjoying it, even if, God, that is a fucked up family.
Yeah, I feel bad for the family.
I feel bad for the other 3 siblings. You said it was a family of 5 with the mum and dad. It's just like, what happened to the other 3? Or did, I mean, to be fair, I would change my name. So.
Yeah, it's like, let's not be a Stayner anymore.
How ironic, Stayner, and they're a stain on society. Right.
Well, on that note, I'll say thank you, Chris, for joining me, and thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you all next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.